another first segment of the season. This time, Team ISO. We are Team ISOing the Buffalo Sabres this week. So we've got from some questions from the Twitter machine, and we're going to put them in there. Remember, if you have some questions for myself, our guests, or anybody, me, you can reach me at P. Bojarnov, or of course our team at Jablam Sports. Joining to discuss all things Sabres, aka more Jack Eichel, are Melissa Burgess. She's the managing editor at Die by the Blade, and of course director of social media at Buffalo Junior Sabres. The list goes on. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You can reach her on Twitter at _Melissa Burgess. And back on the show are Joe Yerdon. He's, of course, been with many places, NHL.com, NBC Sports, The Athletic. You can reach him on Twitter at Joe Yerdon. Joe, welcome back.
Nice to be back, Peter. Good to talk to you again.
Cool. And also Anthony Sciandra. He's the co-host of the Expected Buffalo podcast, Expected Buffalo podcast. You can reach him on Twitter at DBTBANTH. I believe that's the old one, Die by the Blade, Anthony, right?
Yeah, it's actually Expected by Anth now.
There
all
you
spelled
go.
Out. That's
Expected by Anthony. Much easier than Die by the Blade. You moved on from Melissa and her Bang of Thugs, right?
No, actually, I was very glad to see Melissa take over. Chad and I both moved on from Die by the Blade to focus solely on Expected Buffalo, and the site is in very good hands.
Nice. So you guys are expecting lots of stuff, especially with some added analytics.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get to the Eichel stuff and talk, and of course, maybe their chances of going 82-0. But the Sabres dropped a huge bomb move today, right? They picked up Christian Landon off waivers from the LA Kings. Melissa, what does that mean for the depth of this blue line? Does Landon kind of find himself in the top 6 or 7?
I think for the time being, he will, if only because of Henry Jokiharju getting moved to injured reserve. He got hurt, and it was initially billed as he'll be out a couple of weeks, and it's okay, that's fine, no big deal, we can handle that. Now, obviously, it's a little more than a couple of weeks, so it's not a direct correlation because I think they're on opposite sides, but it does help fill in that gap for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm. Out in the summer goes Rasmus Ristolainen. One of the Rasmus I are gone. In comes on the blue line some big names, of course, Landon today, and of course, Will Butcher, Robert Hagg. Big changes here. Of course, both of them are on show me 1-year low cap deals. How does the blue line all look now, Joe? Who's going to be paired with Dahlin so far, at least?
It's a really interesting setup, honestly. When you look at the team, you're just like, boy, I don't know about this team. But considering the questions that were surrounding it, I'd say the defense maybe has the most upside out of everybody. I think the addition of Butcher was interesting because he's got a lot to build off of from last year, because he had a terrible season last year. Robert Hagg's got final year of his contract. He wants to get another one, and he might be looking forward to getting traded at the deadline. Same for Butcher. So these guys have got a lot of motivation for it. But Dahlin is the guy. Dahlin's the guy that is going to show what he's about this year, and I think we hopefully got a taste of that in their game against Arizona this past Saturday, because he looked absolutely dynamic. The smooth skating, smooth puck handling defenseman that everybody wants to see again. The guy that we saw his rookie year. I think maybe he's back. Hopefully he's back. That would be nice to see.
We're going to get to Anthony's predictions, but following up on that, what do you expect? I know on the article that you wrote, you think Dahlin's going to have a good season versus that bad season he had last year.
Yeah, last season wasn't great, and he kind of continued this trend he has of starting slow, right? His first, you can even go and say as far as a third of the season, right? Every year is a little bit rough, and it takes him some time. That kind of continued on as he his best weapons, right, as a player have always been his ability to move the puck and his ability to contribute on the offensive rush. Ralph Kruger's system did not facilitate, it did not accommodate that type of playing style, right? And in a lot of ways, it seemed like he was handcuffed a little bit in that system. It's not a surprise that once the Sabres made a coaching change last year for, I believe it was the last 28 games of the season-ish, to Don Granato, who ran a much more open, high-event system, that Dahlin started to look like Rasmus Dahlin again, right? So the hope is that now that Granato has had a summer to really kind of fortify his system, right, and fine-tune things a little bit, and also you've got the monkey off of his back in Rasmus Ristolainen, who was absorbing those, cornerstone defensive minutes, or whatever your opinion is on him. But Dahlin's the guy, like Joe said. I mean, the pressure's on him this year. He's got to show that he's, and there's no more built-in excuses. I know the Sabres are not built to be a winning team right now. They're rebuilding clearly, but he's got to take the reins as that guy, that number one defenseman who can play 25 minutes a night on your first power play unit and register points and have a positive impact. So again, just to echo Joe, I mean, he is the guy everyone has the microscope on this year.
Sabres are off to a short 2 games so far, but flying season to the start. We're going to drop Anthony's article about his predictions. You expect roughly about 70-point season. And again, this is jablamsports.com, episode 3 of season 7 right now. Nick Olis at Nick Good Stuff asks, will the Sabres ever lose again? Anthony, to follow that up, will they?
I mean, yeah, but you'd love to see a 164-point season, but they've looked good in these first couple of games. And what's interesting, we stress sample size and analytics all the time, and so I'm actually working on an article right now that's just like funny analytic trends, like is it can't even call it a trend, like happenings, occurrences over 2 games, and one of them is that the Sabres are far and away like the best defensive team in the NHL right now, which is really hilarious. I think they're the only team allowing less than 1 goal per game expected at even strength. So it's just funny stuff like that. Like Robert Hagg is our leader in expected goals for per 60. I mean, it's just bananas. So and you can't really single out one player who had a bad first 2 games. I mean, it was really thorough dominance by the Sabres in both those contests. And granted, I think those teams' combined record right now are 0-4-1. So it's not like they were, playing the Maple Leafs or the Lightning, right? But NHL teams are NHL teams, and they showed that they could dominate. And it was really nice to see. And like I said, I think over those 2 games, you had only one guy in Henry Jokiharju, who's now hurt, who had a negative expected goal rate. So everyone's just playing really well, and looks like a team effort, and we'll see how long that continues.
Melissa, are you as optimistic as Anthony is, especially with quite possibly Eichel leaving?
When I made my prediction, I think I said the Sabres would get 58 points this season. Ooh. So I'm definitely on the lower end of things, but I think I'm also on the side of I'm trying to temper my expectations or my hopes, because it's easy to say oh yeah, maybe they'll get 70 points. I think last year I predicted something like 50 points, and then, obviously they had 37. So I was very off. So I think maybe this season I'm trying to go into it with the mindset of expect less. And then if it ends up better, that's great. I've loved the way they've looked the first 2 games. I think, in the start of the game against Arizona, things look a little flat. Things were a little quiet. And then, it just kind of picked up from there. I think the game coming up against Boston later this week, I think that'll be a really good test to see, it's a division rival again, and it's, Boston's a pretty good team. They're going to have to play more physical. And I think that'll be a good test to see, is this for real, or is this just kind of a fluky 2 games?
Melissa, they're 7% of the way to your prediction.
They better slow down, man.
We also probably expect big things from Casey Mittelstadt. Last year, he had just over half a point a game. Joe, are you expecting him to really explode this season?
I I don't know about explode.
Mhm.
I was hoping to see his play trend more in that direction. Obviously, he's going to be out for a little bit after he got slashed on the hand in the opening game, but um, the opportunity is there for him. I think that's the biggest thing. The chance to grab the brass ring is right there for him to take it and run with it. And obviously he's gonna have to wait to get back on the ice and get back to it here. But with that opportunity and the lines that they had him set up with, playing with Jeff Skinner, playing with Victor Olofsson, I mean, those are the two best offensive weapons on the team. You can't ask for a better situation. And he does have the experience playing with Skinner a little bit in the past. He's kind of played with a little bit of everybody through his time with Buffalo, but I want to see more. I want to see him succeed because we've seen the talent there before when he played for the United States in World Juniors. We saw it a little bit at Minnesota. Probably would have been good to have another year at Minnesota, but this is that's all in the past now. If he can take a step here, this would be a huge boon to the Sabres, because I think he's a big question mark because you're not sure what he's going to be able to do.
So before we get to some more younger players, what is the actual update with Jack Eichel? We've seen Kevyn Adams, the general manager, take some time when thinking about what he's going to do, not feeling the pressure of everybody else coming down on him. By example, the Ristolainen trade was pretty good. I know some fans feel that maybe Buffalo should just go into what Jack wants and make the surgery. Is there still a possibility of them at all doing that surgery? And how long do you think Kevyn will take to make this trade, Joe?
I'd say there's a 0% chance of him getting the surgery from Buffalo. Buffalo seems to be dead set on doing it the way that they've said from the get-go since June. And I don't see them changing their mind on that. I think the ship has sailed with Jack, and it's just a question of when he's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
As for Kevyn Adams' holding price, I do wonder if he's going to have to come off that a little bit. And I think, perhaps the admission at the beginning of the camp that yes, he absolutely is going to need surgery, and no, we're not going to give him what he wants, kind of hurts your negotiating position a little bit. Now that's to say they can't get that position back if they do some things like, if they eat some money on Jack's contract, or they, do something along those lines to make it easier for a team that will give him the surgery and does want him to acquire him. But right now, it just seems like that's all kind of at a standstill. We hear the reports from the insiders that, hey, there was a deal that was close a couple of weeks ago, then everything went dead, and then Elliot Friedman just said the other night that the Colorado Avalanche put in a phone call, which I think is kind of surprising because it sure seems like Vegas and Anaheim and Calgary and the likes of them are the ones that are kind of circling the waters for him. But the sooner this trade happens, the better it'll be for Buffalo, the better it'll be for everybody involved, because at least then Jack can get his surgery, he can get healthy and get back on the ice. The Sabres can finally cut the cord, move on, and just be done with it.
Yeah, not to pump 31 Thoughts tires. People, please listen to the Expected Buffalo podcast, as well as Jablam Sports podcast. But Friedman did reiterate too that the Sabres are not wanting to accept salary that way, like keeping some of the salary of Jack Eichel's. Anthony, how does that push them further away, I guess, from making a move?
I don't think they should. Personally, I mean, Jack's got 5 more years left on his deal, unless something paltry like $1 million a year, which, okay, sure. But I mean, if they want something significant, like a quarter of that deal held back, or God, dare I say half, I think the Sabres should absolutely not pursue that option. I think in the Sabres position, they'd be more keen to absorb bad money back rather than retain on Eichel. So, and I believe Kevyn Adams, from everything we've heard and what we know so far, has been kind of taking that approach, right? Unwilling to absorb some of Jack's money in terms of retention, and more willing to take a quote unquote bad deal back for a veteran entity. So, no, I would not recommend that. I like that approach. I like that that part of the philosophy. I mean, there's a million layers to this thing, and God knows when it's going to actually break or what actually has happened, because I don't think you've had more conflicting reports on a single thing since I've covered hockey. So it sure is interesting. I'm glad Joe got that part of the question. So it's like you could do a whole episode on this, Peter. It's a real labyrinth here. But yeah, no, I support Kevyn Adams' position in not wanting to retain. I think that's the right move.
Yeah, the layers of this onion sometimes are pretty stinky, but hopefully they can just rip it and pass it to someone else. And
was that a Shrek reference, Peter?
a little bit. Oh man, but the future still looks bright, right? Even if Eichel leaves, they might get at least a good, decent prospect in that. Casey, Rasmus. We've got Owen Power and all his crew waiting in Michigan, but Owen Power to come. And of course, Dylan Cousins. What are people expecting from Cousins this season, Melissa?
I think it's really a growing season for him, you know, especially with Eichel gone, with Reinhart gone. He's kind of, you know, had to step up into that position where he's kind of now the focus. You know, obviously there's Darlene on the back end, but in terms of the forwards, it's him. You know, it's his forward core to play with, basically. So I think, you know, him with Tage Thompson are kind of the forwards that stick out in my mind for this season. And I think it'll be interesting to see what he can do with hopefully a full season, and, you know, the weight of Eichel and Reinhart kind of off of him and off of the side now, and just focus on what lies ahead.
What type of player are we expecting Dylan to be, Joe?
I think we're not really quite sure yet. I know when he was drafted, it was with the intention that he would slot in behind Jack Eichel, and you know that would be the beginning of the top six of that would take them into the playoffs and then running for a Stanley Cup. That's clearly going to change now, but for what he is, I want to know if he can take another step with his offense. I mean, the offense really wasn't there last year. It wasn't there for anybody last year other than Sam Reinhart. But I think in Dylan's case, I mean, it's his show to run with, but I want to see the offense grow. I like the way he attacks the puck. I like the way he goes after the net. He's able to drive the net and do a lot of things that way. I don't know necessarily that you need your center to do that so much. I think you want your wingers to be the ones to drive the net and your center to distribute. But Cousins it's going to be very interesting to see how he grows this year, because it's going to determine whether or not he's going to be a pretty good number one, or if he would be an excellent number two. Obviously Buffalo wants him to be wants to be a really good number one center. But if it that doesn't play out, listen, they're not going to be good for the next couple of years. If they want to get another center, they can find one for sure. So I know there's pressure on Cousins, but I wouldn't lean on him too hard for stressing him out and saying like, hey buddy, you got to do all this year or else. Like, there's no reason to put that on anybody's shoulders this year, maybe apart from Darlene.
Yeah. Well, nobody mentioned anything about my beautiful Slug hat. Next time, I hope to wear my Afiniganov Slug jersey. Thank you again, guys, for joining me. That's Anthony, Joe, and Melissa. Thank you guys for stopping by.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Peter.